The airport was buzzing with activity as travelers hurried to catch their flights. Amid the crowd, one flight stood out not because of its passengers but because of the crew that would take them through the skies. The plane was ready for a long journey, and everyone on board had their roles to play. Among the crew, the pilot was already setting the tone. He walked through the cabin with an air of authority, his chest slightly puffed up and a look of self-assuredness that was hard to ignore. Every movement, every glance seemed to say that he was the smartest person in the room, and he expected everyone to notice. In the cockpit, the pilot ran through the pre-flight checklist with confidence. He spoke to the co-pilot with sharp, sometimes dismissive commands, making it clear that he believed no one could match his experience. Outside the cockpit, the stewardess prepared the cabin. She had been on many flights, but she always approached each one with a fresh sense of responsibility. She moved gracefully through the rows of seats, greeting passengers, helping them settle in, and ensuring that everything was ready for takeoff. The pilot came out briefly, checking on the cabin and giving orders to the stewardess. His words were polite on the surface but carried an edge, a subtle way of asserting dominance. He made comments about how things should be done, implying that only he knew the correct way to handle situations. The stewardess, while remaining polite, felt a twinge of discomfort. She had encountered arrogant personalities before, but there was something in his tone that suggested he enjoyed making others feel small. As the plane taxied to the runway, the stewardess focused on her duties. She demonstrated the safety procedures to the passengers with clarity and patience. Some passengers looked anxious, and she offered reassuring smiles and gentle words, making sure everyone understood how to use the seatbelts and life jackets. Meanwhile, the pilot occasionally glanced at the cabin from the cockpit, clearly expecting to see a perfect display of obedience. He believed that a flight could not be successful without his strict control over every detail. The stewardess noticed the subtle ways he tried to assert authority over her. It started with small remarks about how she arranged the food and drinks or how she addressed passengers. He would make jokes that were meant to undermine her professionalism, though most passengers would not even notice. She kept her composure, responding with calm, measured words and maintaining her focus on the passengers. She knew that any reaction that showed frustration would only give him more power. As the flight climbed into the sky, the stewardess moved through the cabin attending to passengers. A mother struggled to calm a restless child, and the stewardess offered a kind smile and distraction techniques to soothe the little one. An elderly passenger asked for assistance with a heavy bag, and she was there to help without hesitation. Through these acts of service, she earned the respect of the passengers, even as the pilot continued to assert his dominance from the cockpit. During a moment when the cabin was quiet, the pilot approached her with a smile that did not reach his eyes. He commented on her uniform, her posture, and even the way she spoke to passengers. Each remark was meant to feel casual, but the underlying message was clear. He was testing her, trying to see if she would falter. The stewardess held her ground, responding with professionalism and not giving him the satisfaction of a visible reaction. She had learned early in her career that calmness and composure were powerful tools. The co-pilot, who had been quiet up to this point, exchanged a glance with the stewardess. He seemed aware of the tension and tried to focus on his own duties without drawing attention. The cockpit atmosphere was heavy with unspoken power struggles, while the cabin remained a model of calm and efficiency, thanks to the stewardess's careful attention. Passengers were unaware of the undercurrents, assuming that all was going smoothly because of the smooth service and professional demeanor of the crew. As the hours passed, the stewardess encountered various challenges. A passenger felt unwell, and she provided support and comfort, guiding them through the procedures and ensuring their safety. Another passenger needed assistance with electronic devices and connections, and she patiently helped, making the journey smoother for everyone. With each act, she strengthened her presence and subtly demonstrated leadership without confronting the pilot directly. Her approach was quiet but effective, building trust and respect among the passengers and the crew. Meanwhile, the pilot continued to show his arrogance. He made remarks about the stewardess's choices in front of the co-pilot, and occasionally muttered complaints under his breath. His focus was on maintaining control and proving his superiority. Yet the more he tried to assert dominance, the more the stewardess quietly displayed her competence and calm authority. Passengers began to see her as the figure who ensured their comfort and safety. even though they were unaware of the tension behind the scenes. During a routine check, the stewardess discovered a minor issue in the cabin, a loose tray or a malfunctioning light. She handled it calmly, fixing the problem without making it seem like a big deal. The pilot, upon noticing this, commented in a slightly condescending tone, but she responded with calm professionalism, showing that she was fully capable and unshaken. Her ability to manage the cabin smoothly while he maintained his arrogance highlighted the contrast between their approaches. By the middle of the flight, the stewardess had subtly gained the respect of the other crew members. They began to follow her lead in small ways, trusting her judgment and experience. The pilot noticed this shift but dismissed it, confident that his authority was unchallenged. Yet the seeds of change were already planted. The stewardess's composure, kindness, and efficiency had created a quiet but undeniable influence over the people around her. She continued to move through the cabin with care, checking on passengers, offering assistance, and addressing any concerns. She engaged with children, elderly passengers, and anxious travelers with a calm, steady presence. Each interaction strengthened the bond between her and the passengers, making them feel secure and valued. In contrast, the pilot's arrogance and attempts to belittle her only served to make his behavior more noticeable to those who observed closely. As the flight neared the halfway point, the stewardess found a moment to reflect on the day. She recognized the challenges of dealing with the pilot's behavior, but also saw the opportunity to demonstrate true leadership. She focused on what she could control: the comfort, safety, and well-being of the passengers. Her professionalism, patience, and quiet strength became her tools, and she wielded them skillfully. The first part of the flight set the stage for the unfolding story. The pilot's arrogance was clear, and the stewardess's response was measured and strong. She had not yet confronted him directly, but had begun to assert her presence through competence and calm authority. Passengers were largely unaware of the tension, but the crew dynamics were shifting. The stage was set for the challenges and confrontations that would follow, and the stewardess was already showing that true respect was earned through professionalism and care, not through arrogance or intimidation. By the time the first meal service began, the stewardess had fully established her rhythm. She coordinated the team, served passengers with a smile, and handled any issues quietly and efficiently. Even when the pilot made offhand comments from the cockpit, she maintained her composure, ensuring that the passengers remained comfortable and that the flight ran smoothly. The contrast between the pilot's arrogance and her steady professionalism was becoming more apparent, though most passengers still remained blissfully unaware of the tension above their heads. Throughout this time, the stewardess kept careful notes in her mind. She observed patterns in the pilot's behavior, anticipating moments when he might overstep boundaries. She planned how she could assert control when necessary without causing disruption. Her experience and instinct guided her actions, allowing her to navigate a challenging situation with grace. The stage was set and the flight continued, each passing hour bringing the stewardess closer to the moment when her quiet authority would need to step into the spotlight. As the flight continued into the afternoon, the stewardess moved calmly through the cabin, attending to passengers with quiet efficiency. Each smile, each gentle word, seemed to ease the tension of travelers who were adjusting to the long hours in the air. She noticed small signs of discomfort, hands fidgeting, eyes darting nervously, and she addressed each one, offering reassurance. She could feel the atmosphere slowly shifting. Her presence brought a sense of order and care that passengers naturally gravitated toward. Meanwhile, the pilot remained in the cockpit, occasionally glancing down at the cabin with the same air of authority he had carried since the beginning of the flight. He began making more pointed remarks, subtly questioning her decisions and the way she managed the crew. Some of these comments were directed to her in private, meant to undermine her confidence, while others were uttered aloud just enough for other crew members to hear. The stewardess noticed, but she refused to rise to the bait. She had learned that anger or frustration only gave such people power. Instead, she responded with calm professionalism, addressing every situation with precision and grace. Her movements and words were deliberate. She was fully aware of how much her demeanor affected those around her. During a routine check, a passenger asked for assistance with a heavy bag from the overhead compartment. The stewardess moved quickly to help, guiding the passenger gently while managing the other nearby passengers who were adjusting their seats or belongings. The pilot, watching from above, made a subtle comment about efficiency, but she ignored it, focusing instead on the immediate needs of the people she was serving. Her ability to multitask without losing composure impressed even the more skeptical members of the crew. Some began to quietly admire the way she handled herself. Though none of this went unnoticed by the pilot, the tension escalated when the pilot, still seeking to assert control, made a passing remark about how she arranged the food and beverages. The comment was light, almost casual, but it carried a sharp undertone. The stewardess maintained her calm, not responding with defensiveness. Instead, she subtly adjusted the arrangement with care and precision, making sure passengers received exactly what they needed. The contrast between his attitude and her actions spoke louder than any words. Her competence was quietly visible to all who were paying attention. As the flight reached cruising altitude, the stewardess moved through the cabin, checking on passengers who were resting or reading. She noticed a young traveler looking uncomfortable and approached with a warm smile. She offered assistance, asking if anything could make the journey more comfortable. The traveler relaxed visibly, grateful for the attention. This small interaction reinforced her influence and demonstrated her authority, not through force but through action. The pilot, watching from the cockpit, seemed irritated that she could maintain control over the cabin while he remained confined to the cockpit, relying only on his title. A mid-flight announcement about minor turbulence brought a ripple of unease through the cabin. Passengers glanced around, some gripping their armrests, others exchanging nervous looks. The stewardess immediately responded, walking calmly through the aisle, offering reassuring words and guiding passengers to secure themselves properly. Her voice was steady and comforting, a stark contrast to the distant voice of the pilot over the intercom, which was formal but lacked warmth. The passengers' focus shifted naturally toward her, seeking comfort from the person physically present and attentive to their needs. The pilot, sensing that his control over the cabin was slipping, became more critical. He made subtle remarks intended to highlight mistakes that weren't really there. The stewardess noticed but didn't confront him directly. Instead, she ensured every procedure was followed correctly, silently demonstrating her expertise. The co-pilot, observing this dynamic, remained professional but started to offer quiet support to her whenever possible. The crew slowly began to take cues from her, following her lead in managing the cabin. The stewardess had begun to establish authority not through confrontation, but by quietly earning trust. A family seated near the middle of the plane needed help with their young children and carry-on luggage. The stewardess approached with patience and care, guiding the children gently and arranging the luggage efficiently. Her actions were methodical and kind, ensuring that no passenger felt rushed or ignored. The pilot, noticing how the passengers responded positively to her guidance, made an almost imperceptible frown, a sign that his ego was being challenged. She continued to work without acknowledging his disapproval, focused entirely on maintaining the smooth flow of service and comfort. Later, the stewardess handled a situation involving a passenger who had become suddenly anxious about flying. She knelt beside the passenger, spoke in a calm tone, and explained the routine of the flight and the safety measures in place. The passenger gradually relaxed, grateful for the attention. Through such interactions, the stewardess reinforced her quiet authority, showing that leadership could be expressed through empathy and competence rather than loudness or force. Each act of care subtly strengthened her influence among both passengers and crew. The pilot, meanwhile, attempted to assert his control by giving instructions about cabin procedures, often in ways that ignored her expertise. He did not realize that his comments, meant to undermine her, were instead highlighting her professionalism. The stewardess continued her work, responding when necessary with measured precision. She never allowed his arrogance to disrupt the atmosphere she had created. The passengers, feeling secure and well cared for, were unaware of the tension between the two adults. They only knew that one person in the cabin consistently made them feel safe and attended to. During a break in service, the stewardess checked on her notes and mentally reviewed the flight so far. She recognized the pilot's behavior as a test, a challenge to see if she would falter. She had passed the first part of that test with calmness and composure. She reflected on the need to stay vigilant, knowing that the pilot's arrogance could lead to mistakes or inappropriate behavior at any time. Her strategy was to continue her careful observation, respond with professionalism, and maintain the trust she had earned from passengers and crew. The stewardess noticed subtle shifts in the crew dynamics. Some crew members who had been hesitant to speak up now looked to her for guidance. She quietly coordinated tasks, ensured that safety protocols were followed, and offered support when needed. Her leadership was emerging organically, based on respect and competence rather than rank. This development irritated the pilot, who believed that authority came solely from position. Yet the stewardess's approach was proving far more effective in maintaining order and harmony in the cabin. A minor incident arose when a passenger spilled a drink. The stewardess responded immediately, calming the passenger and cleaning the area efficiently. Her attention to detail and care for passenger comfort further cemented her reputation as a competent and reliable presence on the plane. The pilot, observing from the cockpit, made a passing comment about efficiency, but it lacked substance. Her actions had already demonstrated the truth of her capability, and passengers noticed, even if only subconsciously, the calm professionalism she maintained under pressure. As the afternoon wore on, the stewardess continued to anticipate passenger needs. She adjusted seat positions for comfort, offered blankets, and ensured that meals and drinks were delivered smoothly. She handled small disputes with diplomacy, calming irritated passengers and resolving minor conflicts with tact. The pilot, increasingly frustrated by her effectiveness, made subtle attempts to reassert dominance, but each attempt highlighted the contrast between his arrogance and her competence. The crew quietly began to follow her guidance, creating a more cohesive environment. A sudden announcement of minor turbulence created a ripple of concern. The stewardess quickly moved through the aisles, helping passengers secure themselves, offering reassurance and ensuring that no one panicked. Her steady presence calmed fears and reinforced the idea that she was in control of the situation. Even the pilot had to acknowledge, at least inwardly, that her calm authority had prevented chaos in the cabin. It was a subtle but clear shift in the balance of influence between the two professionals. By the end of the second part of the flight, the stewardess had solidified her role as the quiet but effective leader in the cabin. She continued to earn respect through action, empathy, and professionalism. The pilot's arrogance was beginning to lose its impact, as the passengers and crew increasingly looked to her for reassurance and guidance. Her strategy of calm, measured authority was working, demonstrating that true leadership came not from titles or ego but from competence, patience, and a genuine care for those under one's responsibility. As the flight continued into the evening, the stewardess remained vigilant, maintaining the balance she had established. She continued to anticipate needs, manage the cabin efficiently, and support passengers with care. The pilot, while still present as a figure of authority in the cockpit, was increasingly sidelined in terms of influence over the cabin. The stewardess's ability to maintain control without confrontation highlighted her professionalism and skill. The journey ahead promised more challenges, but she was prepared, and the passengers were in capable hands. As the plane continued its journey, the stewardess remained vigilant, aware that the flight was far from routine. She moved through the cabin with a quiet grace, checking on passengers and attending to their needs. Some travelers were reading, others were trying to rest, and a few were fidgeting with nervous energy. She approached each one with patience, offering help, comfort, and reassurance. Even the smallest gestures, a smile, a gentle word, or a helping hand made a noticeable difference in the mood of the cabin. King her authority in the cabin, the pilot's attempts to intervene were unnecessary and only highlighted her capability, commenting on the sense of security and care they had felt throughout the flight. Back in the terminal, the crew gathered briefly to debrief. The pilot, while maintaining his formal demeanor, acknowledged the stewardess's effectiveness in managing the cabin. Other crew members expressed appreciation for her leadership, noting how she had maintained calm, addressed challenges, and ensured passenger comfort. The stewardess accepted their feedback modestly, her focus always on the well-being of the passengers rather than seeking recognition. Reflecting on the flight, it was clear that the stewardess had demonstrated the power of competence, empathy, and composure. She had handled harassment and arrogance with calm authority, ensuring that her actions, not words, defined her influence. Her ability to manage passengers, crew, and unexpected situations highlighted that true leadership is earned through skill, patience, and care, rather than imposed through ego or position. Passengers continued to exit the plane, many thanking the stewardess personally for her guidance and support. She responded with gentle smiles and kind words, maintaining the professional demeanor that had defined her throughout the journey. Each interaction reinforced the trust and respect she had earned, emphasizing the quiet authority that comes from consistent competence and attention to the needs of others. The pilot, now reflecting on the flight, understood that his arrogance had been counterproductive. His attempts to assert dominance had been quietly overshadowed by the stewardess's effective management of the cabin. He realized that respect is earned, not demanded, and that true authority comes from action, empathy, and reliability. The stewardess's quiet strength had shown that leadership is most effective when it inspires trust and confidence rather than fear or submission. As the passengers departed, the stewardess ensured that each one felt acknowledged and cared for. She assisted the elderly, offered guidance to those unfamiliar with the terminal, and provided reassurance where needed. Her professionalism and kindness left a lasting impression on all who had witnessed her work. Crew members, too, reflected on her approach, understanding that her calm, consistent leadership had made the flight smoother and more enjoyable for everyone involved. Finally, as the cabin emptied, the stewardess took a moment to gather her own thoughts. The challenges of the flight, from subtle harassment to unexpected turbulence, had tested her patience and skill. She had met each challenge with composure and care, demonstrating that true leadership is measured by one's actions and the positive impact on others. The flight had been a test of both character and competence, and she had proven herself fully capable. The pilot, observing from the cockpit, acknowledged that the stewardess had been the key to the cabin's smooth operation. His arrogance had been tempered by her quiet authority, and he recognized, at least internally, the value of professionalism, empathy, and calm leadership. The flight had taught lessons not only to passengers and crew but also to him, highlighting the importance of respect, cooperation, and humility in any position of responsibility. As the day ended, the stewardess walked through the terminal, helping passengers find connections and ensuring that each interaction remained calm and supportive. Her dedication to care and professionalism had left a lasting impression on everyone who had experienced the flight. The journey had not only tested her skills but also demonstrated the power of quiet authority, empathy, and resilience in overcoming arrogance and establishing true respect. The story of this flight would remain with passengers and crew alike, a reminder that true leadership is earned through competence, care, and composure. The stewardess's actions had ensured safety, comfort, and trust, while the pilot's arrogance had ultimately backfired, highlighting the difference between ego and true authority. The flight ended successfully, leaving a clear lesson. Respect and influence come from action and integrity, not from position or bravado. In the end, the stewardess had shown that calm, professional authority always triumphs over arrogance.